Hello, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening and welcome. Welcome to League of Women Voters of Greater Birmingham members, guests, and friends. My name is Mykesha Harville, and I serve as Vice President of the League of Women Voters of Greater Birmingham. We are so delighted to have you here with us this evening. Before we begin, I have a few announcements to make. First, if you already know that you have questions for Mayor Woodfin, if you would please go to the table over here and go ahead and put them on comment cards. We will take your questions up front and then have someone read them. Well, please, that makes sense. If you will raise your hand, then they'll be sure to get your card. Your question. Okay, and just a few other things. I'd like to remind you that the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan group. So there will be no discussion of any candidates or any campaigning of any kind. We believe in civil discourse, simply meaning that we may disagree with some suggestions or comments. Everybody can't agree all the time, but we can do so without being confrontational or disagreeable. Also, we have water located in the back and restrooms to the side. If you're thirsty or need anything to drink, go to the restroom. And lastly, at the end of this discussion, when Mayor Woodfin is done and all the questions have been taken, we will have voter registration located over to the side. That'll be available to anyone who needs to register to vote, or if you just need to renew or update your information, that will be available as well. Okay. Any questions about anything? Okay. So if you have a question, raise your hand and we'll make sure you get a card. We have some people on this side of the room.
Not remind everybody to use their phone.
Oh yes, thank you. Also, please, as a courtesy, if you will please mute your phones, put them on silent for us right now. Thank you. Now, it is with great pleasure that I introduce our speaker of the evening. A native of Birmingham and graduate of Cumberland School of Law, he is committed to bringing a new vision and a new energy to the city of Birmingham. His slogan, "Putting people first," is the core of his administration, and he leads with passion and a servant's heart. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mayor Randall Woodfin.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Now that's probably the best introduction. It was 3 seconds. Everybody's introduction should be extremely brief. I know y'all don't like when the person's introduction is longer than their speech, right? Yeah, I'm happy to stand before you all this evening. There's some familiar faces I recognize, and there are others who I don't, but I do want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak before you. And I'm trying to strike a balance. I think there's some interest in this room of some dialogue, Q&A. So I may give you all the abbreviated version of my remarks. But I do want to say on behalf of the city of Birmingham and my entire administration that I am honored to be here before you all this evening. Celebrate the power of voting alongside the League of Women Voters and the future leaders we have among us. And as the saying goes, and I've said this more than once this week, the future is female. I'm for real.
Yeah. Right.
Now here's why I say it. I know it because I have good examples of a woman many of you all may have come across when I was a candidate running for mayor. Her name is Cynthia Whiffen Keller. That's my mom. And I can tell you, growing up, she always supported me. All of us should have fans in our lives, and I can tell you she's probably my #1 fan. But I can also tell you when I had a vision to run for mayor, when I originally set out to do what I wanted to do, there were probably more naysayers than there were supporters. She told me that if you want to do it and it's in your heart, don't wait. Regardless of what the posters or the political insiders said, regardless of my age, regardless of stiff competition, regardless of money. If they said I shouldn't, she said I should. And I'm grateful to have a strong woman in my life who pushed me to the person I am today that allows me to stand before you all this evening. Now, I can tell you, if there's any charge I want to give, is this. And I'm looking at the age in this room. But I say this to any audience I speak before. Regardless of the circumstance, regardless of your lot in life, regardless of your generation, regardless of your race, regardless of your socio-economic status, regardless of the neighborhood you live in, relentlessly chase your goals and be super unapologetic in your quest to reach your full potential. And I imagine it's probably nothing more important than reaching our full potential as it relates to politics in our community than exercising our power at the ballot box. Now, we all know there are races coming up in a couple weeks, and there's work to do regardless of our party affiliation, regardless of the candidate we support. How we motivate and encourage people to go to the polls to exercise that right allows our process to be smoother, more open, and gets us to the point of accountability as it relates to how we engage those who we say want to represent us. Now, as many of you know, education is near and dear to my heart. Prior to my current position, I served as president of the Birmingham Board of Education. And education is at the cornerstone of my administration. Having been in 6 months yet, I can tell you that education just doesn't end with a diploma. Education evolves. And so how do we connect all of our generations to our community? How do we foster more hope and supporting our younger generation and them understanding the importance of education? So part of that, I believe, it means hearing their problems and us finding solutions to solve those problems. So, and I want to share some stats with y'all. I think it's important before we open up our dialogue. Just 1 in 5 workers in Birmingham region is considered high skilled. This simply means that our workers and their families are at risk as the forces of automation and globalization continue to change the way we organize work. Another stat, unemployment rates are nearly 3 times higher for African Americans, a problem for a majority minority city, but an opportunity for us to diversify our workforce in our community. Another stat is that less than 30% of our jobs are producing goods and services that can be sold outside of our community. This means that new dollars don't flow into our community and we are more vulnerable, unfortunately, to a possible recession. And then too many folks aren't working and they have stopped looking for work altogether. So what does that mean? The unemployment rate looks at people who are looking for work, but nearly 40% of Birmingham adults have left the labor market altogether. This young man in front of me just said, wow. And that's actually an appropriate response when I give you those stats in isolation. And it's sobering, right? Part of my position is to make sure those stats aren't insurmountable. That's why I believe change starts with us, not just your organization, not just City Hall, but all the residents of the city, about how do we want to move forward. And part of that's why you gather here today. So your organization has been on the forefront of not only knowing the issues for some time, but being on the solutions end of addressing these issues. Birmingham knows this lesson as well. It was on the very streets we tread today that our civil rights foot soldiers bravely stood down oppression in the name of equal rights. Those rights include the right to stand at the ballot box, the right to make effective change in our community, of course, and the right to be more than a spectator, but to be an active participant in what this change really means for our community. So we often miscategorize those civil rights strides as struggles of a bygone era. But if that was the case, your organization wouldn't exist anymore. So something that happened well beyond our lifetime still affects the next generation. So I want to remind us of some stuff. Barely 50 years ago, many of you in this room remember, or may remember, a time where voting was not extended to all of us. That's why we must never take it for granted. So I want to implore each of you to play a role, which you already are, if you're a member of this organization, in reshaping our city and stepping into the future. That it's not just about what we're doing in the present for all of us who are living, but what are we passing to the next generation. And so my role as mayor is to make sure to be on the solutions end of removing roadblocks that keep voters away from the polls. But my role is also to empower our community to speak their truths. All of us speak different truths because all of our backgrounds are different. Our neighborhoods are different. Our beliefs are different. But truth is truth. And the more truths we get out there, the easier this conversation is easy to have. The reason I believe that is because I'm standing in front of you all because people believe in me. But there's a return of that in me believing in the best of the people in this city. And as I reflect on the importance of powerful organizations like the League of Women Voters, I gotta tell y'all something. And it's really a rhetorical question. But who shaped this country? There are many women who were part of this organization well before you all. And the reason, the purpose this organization was founded and existed allows people like Doug Jones to be elected U.S. Senator. Because it was the year of the women, not just in 18, but in 17 as well, as it relates to that special election. I mean, we not want to talk about it like that, but women in the state of Alabama will probably decide what the next governor is as well. Oh, it's nonpartisan, my bad. It's a joke. But let's talk about some powerful women, right? Let's talk about women like Zora Neale Hurston, who unapologetically wrote her truths, becoming a scribe for the Black women experience. Or women like Shirley Chisholm, the first Black congresswoman and the first Black woman to contend for the Oval Office. Pioneers like Harriet Tubman and Rosa Parks, who shook off fear and were defined by their bravery. Modern day icons like First Lady Michelle Obama, who always put poise above and over pretentiousness. The multitudes of women who shaped the women's suffrage movement, who paved the way for events like the one that allows me to stand in front of you all this evening. And yes, women like Cynthia Whiffen Keller, whose unwavering love shines like a lighthouse, not just for me, but for the city. And so, what I want to leave you with: perseverance, fortitude, and conviction. When we push our issues, whether it's our single issue, whether it's your organization issues, whether it's a city issue, to get to the actual solution of solving our problems, perseverance, fortitude, and conviction allows us to get there. It may not be the smoothest ride, but if we have those three ingredients, I am convinced, not just me as a leader, but anyone that's a part of this city, any organizations that want to be a part of a movement to make Birmingham a better community for all of us, need to embrace those three ingredients. So I want to close with this. Many people still today, well over 100 days, but not 6 months into office, ask me, why did I run for mayor? I ran with the silly notion that I can actually make a difference in our community. Your organization has been around for quite some time, and there's still changes your organization wants to make. But you've made strides in making those changes. Many of your foremothers and forefathers believed in delayed gratification, that even if they couldn't see it while they were alive, things could be put in place for the generation to come. Well, I'm well aware in my position that I have a 4-year term, right? And that requires me to appreciate having a sense of urgency, but balancing that with being patient at the same time. It allows me to run really fast towards my goals and at the exact same time understand delayed gratification. And it also allows me to be pragmatic and realistic and know I can't necessarily get everything accomplished in 5 or 6 months. Because if that was the case, you would have to run every year. But I believe with all the challenges facing our residents, there are more solutions than there are problems. And there is a spirit that is going on. We saw it in 2016, we saw it in 2017, and we see it creeping in 2018 as well. We've seen it at the federal level, we've seen it at the state level, and unfortunately we see it at the local level too. Well, here's my response to that spirit that doesn't necessarily work for us. Always remember why the organization you're a part of exists. Remember why a city government exists. And if I had to connect the two, it still boils down to serving people. Organizations exist to serve a purpose and or people. Municipalities and local governments exist to serve people. Remember that there are more solutions than there are problems. And that for every single person in this room, you represent something that's bigger than you. You represent the purpose and the mission of this organization. What I like to tell people is that collectively, it's easier to solve issues than it is for us to pit our ideas against each other, even if we have the same end goal and how to get there. And so, I'm charged with embracing every generation. I like to use the example of the pothole. Generation Boomer hits a pothole. The mother that is 40 years of age with 3 children in a minivan hits the pothole. And the young person that's 18 to 21 hits the pothole. That 18 to 21-year-old has a nice car with some cool rims. The mother with the 3 kids has a minivan, standard tires. And the senior has a car that's been in the garage that only has 90,000 miles on it, but the car is probably 20 years old. They hit the same exact pothole. How do they interact with City Hall? The senior will actually want to come down to City Hall and probably talk to the mayor in person.
Yeah.
Come to a city council meeting and complain in person. And if that doesn't work, they'll probably write a letter explaining this pothole, giving the address, etc. Well, the mother with the 3 children probably doesn't have time to come down to City Hall, but she will make a phone call and send an email about the same exact pothole. And then the young person, what they'll want to do is snap a picture of that pothole and use an app to send it to City Hall. Same pothole, same problem affects all 3 people. It doesn't matter. The year of the car is the same, the tire, same pothole. It affects all of us the exact same. How we communicate that problem is 3 different ways. But everybody wants the same result. Fix the damn pothole. Why do I use that example? We all communicate differently. We all use different channels of communication. We all see things differently. And I'm 100% comfortable with that in my position as a leader. That I have to embrace differences, that I have to embrace different perspectives, I have to embrace different personalities and different temperaments and different communication styles. And have to be and remain big picture the entire time. Because I'm trying to get all of us to the result of solving the problem. Some of us may not like how we solve the problem, but we're going to solve the problem. And so I'm encouraged to stand before this group because I know the reason why you were founded. And if there's anything the city of Birmingham can ever partner with you on, let us know. We want to stand shoulder with you to make sure the things you're trying to champion on behalf of residents in Birmingham, on behalf of voters in Birmingham, it gets accomplished and it gets done in the right way. Madam President, thank you. Thank you.
I have the first question for you. At your 6-month mark in office, what are your short-term goals for the next 6 months and your goals for the rest of your term? And what have been your big challenges so far?
Well, I guess we'll go forward first and then go backwards with problems. I think going forward, I need to stand up some social justice issues we've campaigned on. And so the first 6 months, you inherit an organization, a city that has 4,400 employees. You inherit a city that's in the middle of an actual fiscal year, so dollars are already aligned and allotted, expenditures, etc. And then you inherit a culture where things have been pretty much done the same way for 30 plus years. And then I watch people's heads explode because I can't solve them in 6 months. And I get it. I'm not pushing back on their frustration or their anger or their non-patience. I ran because I wasn't patient. I ran because I didn't want to wait another 4 years for things to change. Here's what I like to remind people. Government is not fast food. You can't pull through a drive-through or drive-up, order what you want to happen, pull up to the first window, pay some money, pull up to the second window, get what you want done, and move on. We should work like that. I can have all the potholes filled in the first 6 months. But it requires a balance of being able to do some low-hanging fruit things that you can solve right away and tackle, and then some forward long-term thinking and be able to solve problems along the way. So, over the next 6 months, there's some things around social justice, whether it's in the LGBTQ community, whether it's in recycling, whether it's in environmental, etc. We have to stand up, because those weren't just campaign promises. Those were things that have been missing and neglected in the city for some time. And if the mayor's office is not going to interject itself in some social justice issues, they probably won't get accomplished. So we're going to stand that up. Second thing, the first 6 months, you've all heard me talk about neighborhood revitalization has been geared towards what do we do to make neighborhoods safer, and from an aesthetic standpoint, get rid of things that are blighted and beyond repair in our city. And so we've been aggressive of tearing down structures, commercial and residential, that are beyond repair and cause not only blight, but hurt residents' property value and attract crime and other things. Yes, sir. But it's not enough, y'all. It's not. Because then you have to worry about the overgrown lot. No one wants the overgrown lot. You can't cut your way out of this problem. What we got to do is, over the next 6 months, is take another look at what do we really want in our city? What do we define as growth? Improving the quality of life of the residents that currently live here, but it's also defined by a number of roofs you have in single-family homes. So we really need to take a look at housing. And so our community development has a new director. Nigel Roberts is partnering with many people in the housing sector. And we need to stand up not only affordable housing, but single-family units as well. We need to engage the housing authority in a different way, etc. The third thing over these next 6 months is boards and agencies. You all saw me take a hard line with the transit board about 2 weeks ago. Overly needed, right? Hear me out. I don't appoint anybody on the transit board. I'm not in control of the executive director of the transit board. But their riders are our residents. And I'll be damned if I sit on the sideline and allow $11 million of city tax dollars to be poured into an organization where they're not investing in more efficient buses, routes, transportation, and the employees and the riders. It can't be that way. I don't have to tell y'all. Y'all know it's bad. And so they're an example. But for the second time in a year, the customers of our water are displeased, not only in the faulty billing, but in customer service and in all these other aspects. So we need to look at waterworks as well. And we need to look at all boards and agencies across this entire city. So that's what we'll be doing over the next 6 months as well. Some of the biggest challenges. Here's the biggest challenge that I've run into. Culture. So we interject ourselves into the mayor's office, into the administration, and we're saying this is how we want to provide better services. We want to focus on core values of customer service, being more efficient, being more effective, being transparent and accountable. And you walk into City Hall and some employees are like, yeah, let's go, let's do that. And other people are like, yeah, we'll wait it out. We'll have a new administration, maybe 4 years from now if you decide to run again. And if you win, maybe 8 years from now. And things will remain the same because they've been this way for 30 plus years. So you hit a brick wall of culture where people don't have a sense of urgency of wanting to make things better. And so we just turn the heat up a little bit more on the accountability piece. Mayors can't walk around and just fire civil service employees. What we can do is say, listen, we value you. We appreciate the work you've done. We appreciate the services you've been providing in your civil service position for all these years. Are you happy? Do you want to be in this position? Is there something you need from a professional development standpoint? How can we help you be a better leader within your department, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And that requires me to push my department heads who are in place, as well as make sure I put department heads who understand not only those core values, but also understand leadership and holding people accountable.
We have another question for you.
Yes.
Thank you. This is from Miguel. He says, I am an immigrant. I wasn't able to vote for you, but I encourage many people to get out and vote. So, how come you're not supporting or signing sanctuary policies to support the sanctuary city ordinance? And let me just say, if anybody needs to ask a question, raise your hand and I'll get you a card and a pen. You can pass your questions to the end of the row. Thank you.
So a sanctuary city ordinance has been given to my legal department. And they have it. We've gone back and forth probably a little over 21 days now. I've had multiple conversations in person, multiple meetings. And I want everyone to hear what I'm about to say. I want to make this extremely clear. BPD, Birmingham police officers, the officers that I'm responsible for, who protect the city, who serve the city, will not ever be in the business of doing the federal government's job as it relates to immigration status. Won't happen. Not on my watch. I'm required as mayor to strike a balance. Am I pleased with the current president or the current administration in office? Absolutely not. Do I support their policies? No. Guess what I gotta do? I gotta work with the state and I gotta work with the federal government. What does that mean? There are so many grants and so many federal dollars available that the city of Birmingham qualifies for as it relates to all the quality of life issues in our city. And so I have a crime problem in this hand in the city of Birmingham where I have to use carrot and stick there are a minority of criminals who are at a point where you have to use full stick, but the majority of criminals you can actually use carry. And so there are DOJ dollars available to provide prevention and re-entry on the educational front, on the workforce training front, on the conflict resolution front, and all these multiple things where we, with our limited tax dollars, don't have the dollars to provide. What's that balance? Going forth with an ordinance being shut off from dollars that support my crime issue. But I just told you, and I know I'm being recorded, I'm not going to do the federal government's job. Ordinance or no ordinance. You have to trust me and my police when I say I'm not going to do it, because I'm looking into your face. This is not the first time I've said it. I don't have a problem with sanctuary cities. I don't believe they are violating any federal, state, or local laws. But I also have a balancing act to make sure that I leverage every resource I can to solve issues in this city. And so I haven't necessarily come to an agreement with my legal department yet of how that document should look. That's the answer.
Mayor, I have some questions, and they're all similar, so what I'm going to do is discuss it, give it to you.
All at once, because they all generally have a central issue. Okay, one is, what is your plan to end homelessness in Birmingham? And also plan to improve, well, this is a little different, to improve bus transportation. But there have been several comments about poverty and about infrastructure in the neighborhoods and about, yeah, and about gentrifying. So why would you endorse building a huge multi-million-dollar stadium when there are communities in Birmingham that are struggling to fight against being gentrified? What actions are you going to take to help out impoverished communities? I urge you to become familiar with Dynamite Hill in Smithfield Community Land Trust and attend their workday on Saturday. Another is, what are your specific anti-poverty policies your administration is working on? Allegedly, that was a part of your platform when you were running. And the other one is, how can we create a unified city in the current climate? How do you handle changes that could affect neighborhoods, infrastructure, and socioeconomic issues when affluent property owners want to purchase property in poor neighborhoods or purchase church space in poor neighborhoods? And the last one, they're all similar. What opportunities do you see for working in collaboration with neighboring cities to maximize resources and address common problems and concerns? Thank you.
So I have a pretty good recall, but I cannot do that. And I may ask her to repeat some of those questions, because that was a lot of questions, Joe.
But there were three things central about all of them. It was talking about the infrastructure in the neighborhoods.
Infrastructure.
And it was talking about wealthy property owners coming into the neighborhoods, buying property in poor neighborhoods. Gentrification. Yes. And the other one was talking about why we would purchase multi-million-dollar buildings when we have struggling neighborhoods. So all of them were talking about struggling neighborhoods.
All right. Let's see. It's a lot. There was also the word poverty, gentrification, Dynamite Hill, anti-poverty, unified city infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. All right.
You got it.
So, let's see if I can take these one at a time. Remind me to give you your pen back. Thank you. Stadium. Stadium is not an isolated conversation. I want you all to know something. I don't make decisions in isolation. As mayor, I do a lot of assessing. do a lot of research, do a lot of homework, and I communicate a lot with people. I also want y'all to know I believe in scientific polling, where you actually have a professional doing a poll that's a third-party person or organization that's neutral and objective to assess the situation via questions and polling, where the sample size is legitimate, as well as the following. The margin of error is well below 5%. So everything I just said was the opposite of the presidential election of 2016. Serious. Before I even engage this council, on should we move forward with investing in an upgrade of the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Center, before I engage this council on investing in an upgrade and renovation of Legacy Arena, and before I move and engage in this council on talking about should we build a new stadium. And so this wasn't just one project, this is 3 projects. We only tend to talk about one. A poll was commissioned by a third-party organization, not based in Birmingham, to engage Birmingham voters and to see what they wanted in regards to tourism, what they wanted in regards to the BJCC, Legacy Arena, a possible stadium, entertainment amenities, etc. Over 80% of the people in this poll said they wanted the city to invest in its existing infrastructure as well as a new stadium. Cross-section, black people, white people, north, south, east, west, across the city, 99 neighborhoods. The whole idea of tourism and events is the following. How many of you all, by show of hands, travel? How many of you all travel to other cities for entertainment? How many of you all would want more entertainment in your own hometown? And if more entertainment was in your own hometown, this is the last question. How many of you all would attend entertainment in your own hometown? Cool. So, some of us in this room right now love concerts. Some of us love sporting events. Some of us love conferences. Some of us love conventions. Some of us love a little bit of everything. And we get in our vehicles and we drive about 140 miles to Atlanta, or we drive to Nashville, or we drive to New Orleans for everything I just named. And when you hit these cities, there's some similarity going on in all of them. One of the words that comes to mind, this is a long answer, but there's a lot of questions. It's proximity. You walk into the Georgia World Congress Center, which is Atlanta's convention space. You step out of it, a basketball arena is in your face. And then you step out of there, a football arena is in your face. And similar in Memphis with their basketball and baseball stadium, and similar in New Orleans with their basketball and football stadium, and the convention not too far. I guess if you have enough alcohol, you can walk to it. In other cities, Nashville as well. And what the city is doing with the now $436 million budget is comfortable taking well less than 1% of that budget to invest in its existing infrastructure as well as a new stadium for the following reasons. It's because our residents want the same things that they're traveling to other cities for. And then there's a return, right? That the more events we have in our city, the more conventions we have in our city, the more entertainment the more et cetera we have, the more people use our hotels, the more people eat in our city, the more people shop in our city, and there's more sales taxes. Whereas the city, there's already a dependence on sales taxes. But then there's something I had to add as well why I support it. There's two more things. One is you got to take a pulse, a political pulse of what's happening with other groups. So we talk about regional cooperation, and what we realize is there are not many examples of it. The city of Birmingham is not going at this in isolation. Now, this conversation has been in existence for about 40 years. But for the first time in the region's history, you literally have the BJCC, you have the state of Alabama, you have the county, you have the city of Birmingham, you have UAB, and you have you have private donations. All of that collectively, the groups are putting in on this. Equity doesn't necessarily mean everybody's paying the same dollar amount. But our return is higher than everybody, minus the BJCC. And it's the return, it's the major reason why I support it. Remember we talked about hitting some walls when I got to City Hall? One of the walls you hit is a financial wall where you say you want to do all these things but you don't have the money to do it. And so you want to focus on neighborhood revitalization, but you realize you can't necessarily find enough money for neighborhood revitalization. Or you want to focus on all these things. And so many people feel burned from a historical standpoint. They say they're going to build a summit. The summit is going to net more additional sales tax dollars. Those dollars are going to go back into our neighborhoods. 20 years later, it never happened. And it's the same feeling about Uptown. It's the same feeling about a baseball park, etc. So we chose a different approach that's never happened, an approach that the council approved, etc. That with this new additional revenue, for the first time in the city's history, we're actually creating a neighborhood revitalization fund where 100% of the additional revenue in this footprint goes into a pot for neighborhood revitalization only. So it doesn't go back into the general fund, doesn't go to support personnel, it doesn't go to support anything but neighborhood revitalization. And then I look to what are the other elected official groups I'm doing? What are the other elected officials who are supporting this doing? So you got 5 county commissioners. You have 17 state representatives that make up the Jefferson County delegation down in Montgomery. You have 2 senators that make up local. Statewide, you have 22. And then you have 9 councilors. And so go back to that poll I told you about where the majority of people said they wanted this. And then you reflect on, is there really a split or a divide among these elected groups? And you find out it's not. Out of 5 county commissioners, 5 out of 0 said they support it. Out of 17 Jefferson County delegations, out of 17 state representatives that make up this entire region, 14 out of 17 said they support it. Both senators said they support it. Statewide, 22 out of 22 senators support it. Out of 9 councilors, 6 support it. If it was that much of a divide, you would see more of an 8-7 situation, or a 3-2 situation, or a 5-4, but we didn't see that. And I get it. A lot of times in our community, anywhere, not just in Birmingham, but you have 9 people that are supporting and they're very silent, and there's 1 person not supporting and it's very loud. But you put your blinders on and you run the play because you know long term it's beneficial to the community. Is everybody going to agree? Absolutely not. But I can guarantee you this, the people that will support it will be the first people in those stands. And remember, this is not just about a stadium. There will be major upgrades to the BJCC and Legacy Arena too. So that gets us to our next point of infrastructure. City of Birmingham depends on our capital dollars for infrastructure. We're about $50 million. Probably need about $50 million to pave all of our streets, to get our streets up to where they need to be. We're well behind. I think the prior administration went to the bond market back in October 2012. They did $150 million, $75 million in 2 phases, and I can tell you 6 years later, money still hasn't been spent because they went out to bid, things were overbid, change orders, et cetera, and there were different categories, not just street pavings, but parks, libraries, recreation centers, and other infrastructure upgrades. But external infrastructure upgrades that you care about, because you don't care about city buildings for real. Street paving, main one, or our parks we have to use. There's so much more work to do, so we gotta find more money. I'm gonna literally touch on everything she said. Poverty. What am I doing about poverty?
Homelessness.
I got you. I got it written down. I'm with you. Yes, ma'am. Poverty hits so many different angles. The biggest thing I'm trying to do about poverty is invest in education for our current youngest generation. So full pipeline, birth to 12th grade. So here's what I fundamentally believe. The biggest way I can make an impact and bust through the wall of poverty is to graduate more students from Birmingham City Schools. The more children we graduate and put them on one of 3 paths, because I'm unaware of any other paths. College, military, workforce. Then there's employment opportunities, 2 of them in the immediate and 1 delayed gratification. But those 3 allow people to have employment opportunities, which allows them to be able to buy a home, rent an apartment, feed themselves, pay to get from point A to B, etc., which long-term decreases poverty. Short-term, what do we want to do? I think one of the things we're doing is taking a hard look at healthy food. And so I think there's a huge correlation between our food, what's the word, apartheid?
Yes, we are in a food apartheid, which means it's a purposeful construct to prevent people from getting access to food, and we don't want to share power to get it. We need to own the land, grow the food ourselves, and move toward food sovereignty. We need to have control over the food process, moving eventually to creating an internal food hub.
So, thank you. There's a food apartheid and there are food deserts. One of the immediate things we're trying to do is use West End as an example. We know on the front end that a Winn-Dixie is closing or being close to being closed. And we don't have the luxury to sit idle on the sideline and just increase the limited access to healthy food. So what can we do as a city? What we're looking at is several options. One is if people can't get to healthy food, we need to be able to get healthy food to people. And so totally re-looking at how, particularly for our seniors, our most vulnerable residents, literally how do we get food to them? I don't want to necessarily mention the company yet we've been engaging with, but I think it's important to note that none of y'all go to Blockbuster anymore. But Netflix doesn't even come in y'all mailbox anymore either. It comes straight to your computer in your house. And many of you all get certain services delivered straight to you that you deem meaningful to your personal life or your professional space or whatever. And so in that same regard, let's reorient ourselves of how healthy food interacts with people. If they can't go to it, we need to bring it to our residents. There are other options as well. There is an amazing farmers market in Decatur, Georgia. Does anybody know about this farmers market? It's high hands, let me see. All right, high hands, who's been? Why can't we have that in our community? Right? What's stopping us?
We can with the Dynamite Hall Smithfield Community Land Trust.
Cool. Here's the point. We have to be intentional in the space of healthy food. And so I think that is a good way to fight against poverty. I think the other thing is transportation, believe it or not. And so why we have currently a bus system that many people have some issues with. Show of hands, who has an issue with Max? Okay. Do I have any big fans of Max who think everything is hunky-dory, going good? All right, no.
I think it's good that we have it.
It's good that we have it. I think it is too.
4 hours to go from West End to a clinic down in Hoover,
Not good. So, who says public transportation has to be a bus and on fixed routes? Like, who made that rule? We don't even know. We don't have to stick to it though. The legislators a couple years ago gave local municipalities and counties the authority to either create transit organizations or engage transit in a different way. And so we're looking at engaging transit in a different way. We make this very clear. We're not anti-Max, we're not anti-BJCTA. I support those employees and I think their employees are doing a good job. I would like for their board to get out of the way. I said that, didn't I? I said that all right.
Way to go, way to go.
He said way to go, so I gotta approve. Thank you, sir. So those are some examples. And then we get to gentrification. And it is so important that I have audiences like this. I'm not sure why you gave me the mic, because I can now talk. It's not necessarily sit in front of the media where they take a snippet of what you say and it gets lost in translation. And in such a sensitive topic, it's important that I communicate my thoughts, what I see, and then what roles the city can play in making sure things that we've seen in other cities aren't happening or don't happen here. Everyone, if I ask each and every single one of you all right now, what's your definition of gentrification, I guarantee you I will get different answers. Don't have a problem with that. We all have our thought process of what gentrification is. Again, earlier in the speech, you heard me say I'm okay with differences. But I think all of us would agree with a portion of what gentrification is the displacement of people who are already in an existing footprint in a geographical area. Neighborhood, community, certain portion of the city, etc. And so then that requires me to dig deep, to not only dig deep into our 99 neighborhood and see what's going on in each and every single one of them, but to also compare ourselves with other cities. And then when I look at other cities, here's what I find. Two that come to mind right away are the District of Columbia, DC, and Atlanta, Georgia. Kasim Reed took office in 2009 in the city of Atlanta. I believe Atlanta was 63% African American. Kasim Reed leaves office. They now have a new mayor. I don't even think she's been in office. She's been in office right at 100 days. Atlanta is now 51% African American. Some would say that is real gentrification. Over an 8-year period, the city goes from 63% African American to 51% African American. 8-year span. District of Columbia, come on y'all. If you don't know, it used to be called Chocolate City. It's referencing the high concentration of African Americans. Beautiful sight, by the way. DC in 2018 is probably right at 50% black. Used to be well over 80%. Now that took place a little bit more than 8 years. Then we talk about this correlation of property value where the current people there either by sale can't afford or by rent are priced out, right? So then what's happening in Birmingham? I got 99 neighborhoods. Where is growth happening? Where is construction happening? Where is property value increasing? Are people being displaced? Central City is a neighborhood. I'm unaware of displacement in Central City, but we see a high flux of people moving into Central City. It's Railroad Park area, new housing going up. But in the last 30, 40 years, I'm unaware of housing that was there or people there. So no one has been displaced. And then, right where we're sitting, Avondale. Avondale is a community made up of 3 neighborhoods: South Avondale, East Avondale, North Avondale. North Avondale over those train tracks. Y'all can tell me, but I haven't seen any displacement on the other side of those train tracks. South Avondale, which for the most part, I haven't seen displacement. What we have seen is an increase in property value and rent. The South Avondale as a neighborhood has always been majority white. North Avondale has always been majority black. That leaves us East Avondale. East Avondale, is fair to say there's a question mark. What's actually happening? Because you got to go this way coming east, right? And then that's where we have work to do. What ordinances can we benchmark in other cities, such as Chicago, who's facing the same issue of making sure from on the renting side, people aren't priced out? And what's that conversation? I think it's a very fair and worthy conversation to have. But when I put it like that, people say, well, are you trying to say gentrification don't exist? No, what I am trying to say, there are a lot of moving things going on, but you gotta look at it. And so here's a question. Oh, Woodlawn's a good example too. Woodlawn's changing. So we got work to do. Here's what I'll say. It's a balance I have to strike again as being mayor. City of Birmingham school system is almost stabilizing. At a certain point, the system was losing a minimum of 1,000 students a year. And it got up to about 800, 900. We're still there. Birmingham City school system has been probably well over 90% African American population for well over a decade. And so children follow adults, they follow their parents. You lose 800, 900 students a year. Let's just be fair and say they probably have siblings. So we're probably losing a minimum of 400, 500 families a year population. Part of the conversation is not just gentrification in this hand. I have to worry about the people who are voluntarily leaving as well. That's the part we never want to talk about. But I have to as mayor. Because it's not just about people being displaced or possibly being displaced. It's also about how do you keep your population in your city? And are more people moving out than people moving in? I think I would say yes. And I would also venture to say more people are moving out voluntarily than they are being displaced in the city of Birmingham. Go back to those numbers I mentioned earlier, which is why there's a question mark around gentrification in Birmingham. The city of Birmingham population about 10 years ago was about 74% black. Today, the city of Birmingham's population is about 73% black. You look at that number compared to the city of Atlanta and the city of DC. Of those three cities, where's gentrification happening? So that leaves me with a unified city. This is a very interesting topic because probably the last 21 days we've been talking about pastors and churches. Anybody know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So let's speak very plainly about it. Anybody okay with that? Is anybody okay with me speaking very plainly about unifying this city and using the church as an example? Is anybody sensitive to that and want me to use another example?
You can't get a more plainly speaking place than Beloved Community Church.
Thank you, brother.
Roll on.
He says roll on. What's your name, brother?
About will.
Thank you, sir. I had a meeting with Chris Hodges. He called me and says he wanted to come sit down with me. I want y'all to know this meeting probably took place 12, 14 weeks ago. I want you to know when he walked into City Hall, the first words were out of his mouth were two things. I am praying for you, and I don't want anything from the city of Birmingham. In this conversation, in this room at City Hall, we never had one conversation about a physical church building, about church, about what happens on a Sunday at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. It never took place. What we talked about was your existing service projects and programs where you go into communities and help. Cool with me? I want y'all to know I was raised as a Christian, Baptist. My definition of Christ-like is like the opposite of judging. My definition of Christ-like is being extremely open and accepting of people who are different from me in race and religion and thought and beliefs and mindsets. I grew up in a household that were never less than 8 people, minimum 4 generations. So you gotta learn how to communicate with folk. You gotta learn how to accept differences and be able to move about. Chris Hodges announces that he's building a church somewhere. I found out the same way he found out. Truthfully though, I still don't have a problem with that, personally. But in their politics, you got to play in this city. And then here is where it gets weird. And because it's so weird, I know my pay grade. Theology is above my pay grade. What happens at a church, inside a church, with inside church walls on a Sunday is above my pay grade. And I'm disappointed in the conversation because it's so messy. It's so negative. And it's so how I feel about it in my opinion. And because my opinion is different from another person's opinion, that person's opinion is wrong. And I'm like, yo, what's up? None of this is, quote, Christ-like. None of it. And then I realized there's some deep-rooted things here why people feel the way they feel. But nobody gets mad at me when I sit down with Pastor Van Moody. He's an African-American pastor. He came to me too. Says, I got some programs, want to partner with the city with. He doesn't want $1 from the city. He's not getting $1 from the city. Chris Hodges doesn't want $1 from the city. He's not getting $1 from the city. Y'all gotta hear me when I say this. Hindu, Buddhist, Islamic faith, Christianity, black, white, young, old, I don't care. If you want to help people in this city, I will partner with you. My definition of partnership doesn't mean I'm giving you tax dollars. Let me make that clear. My definition of partnership does not mean I'm giving you $1. If pastors have a problem with each other, come on, y'all. None of us as adults can expect children to solve their problems in a different way, put down guns, deal with conflict resolution in a responsible way, and we don't have pastors doing that. Help me out, y'all. Somebody, please. Lifeline, help me. I'm cool with people disagreeing. It's okay. None of us see things the same. Y'all heard me say that earlier. But if there is any group of leaders in this community that I expect to elevate the conversation, y'all can tell them I said it. It's faith-based leaders. And this conversation is not elevated. It is in the gutter right now. Pull it up. Have your differences. Talk it out. Walk it out. Pray it out. I don't care. But the current way it's going, I'm going to tap out and focus on the community. Because that's what my focus has been anyway. And I told y'all, theology is above my pay grade. Let's focus on the positive. Because that's how I'm going to unify the city. But that was a long example. A very, very long example of, that's the opposite of unity. Thank you.
To get the mayor out by 7, and we have covered quite the spectrum this evening. The League of Women Voters of Greater Birmingham would like to thank Mayor Woodfin for his time tonight, for some very provocative and creative thoughts that we're going to discuss and we're going to follow up on as the League is traditionally done. We'd like to thank Reverend Sanders and Beloved Community Church for providing such an excellent venue. Thanks to the mayor's staff for helping make this happen. And some of you may not have gotten your questions answered. We've been talking with the mayor's staff. We're going to provide those questions, and we'll be liaisoning with his staff to get answers, which we will put on our website so that everybody can get an opportunity to hear more from Mayor Woodfin. And we hope to have you back and look at your accomplishments maybe a year from now. So thank you very much. Thanks for your time this evening. Voter registration in that corner if you need an update.